We're at a very strange day today. We're at the day that the elections happened. So we're in a kind of pivotal moment. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a different president. Or we're going to see a different president in the sense that Donald Trump will be in and the Wild West will begin. All the things that he thought he was worried about affecting left-wing voters, they're all out the window because he's got free rein, you know. I don't know the way this is going to go. It can actually go two ways, you know what I mean? It could go in a hopeful way. In my political opinion, you know, there could be somebody else in America or wherever watching this and they could totally disagree with me. I think Trump is a despot. I think he's a liar. I think you've heard all of that stuff already. Anybody from any sane point of view thinks this about Donald Trump. But the Americans might not think that. America might not think that. They may vote him in, and if they vote him in, you know, properly and with democracy, then that's the way it should be. He's the most important figure, I suppose, not like the last 10 years and the last 20 years. You know what I mean? He's an incredibly important person in all of our lives at the minute because the way that this swings affects the world. This is quite a strange one because it started off as a commercial art project. It started off as an illustration project. Like, I'm an illustrator, I'm a graphic designer, and I'm a commercial artist, you know what I mean? I'm not going to beat around the bush. I started this project in January as a commission for Creative Review, a design magazine, which I strangely have. And all of this stuff around me right now ended up on the cover of Creative Review. I've done like 3 different covers for the magazine. Then I was kind of left with all this stuff. I was left with all this kind of raw material. And as the years went on with Corona, with you know, the financial crash because of that, with all the racial tension in America, and then which is then kind of spread out to the rest of the world. Well, just the world to me at the minute is so polarized and divided, and I was kind of hoping that Joe Biden would get in today. But at the minute, it's on a knife edge, and it's kind of weird to have this as almost as a document of to what's happening. The work will change over the next 2 or 3 weeks, depending on which way it goes, I suppose. The way to get something done is to begin. It's just about putting something on a page. If the blank canvas exists, it's right there. Stick something on there. If it starts looking shit, move on, next up. And like, until you get something, and some days it doesn't happen. Some days you do get that block, and it's not like an easy process at all. But then there's other days you get into that kind of flow state, and there's no stopping you, and you can really produce. One thing I'm quite good at is in the morning I get up and I'm really, like, if I've got a clear head, I've had a coffee, I've gone, that's crap, that's good, that's crap, that's good. I'm really good at spotting my own crap work. As a kid, I was much more of a kind of drawn, you know, copying things, you know what I mean? Sort of copying comics or copying like album covers. I always remember like sort of the first time I ever seen an album cover which made this kind of explode, it kind of blew my mind was my dad had a copy of Disraeli Gears by Cream. And it was the first time I'd really seen like neon colours, you know. And that was like in the late 60s, early 70s. To have like neon colours which feature a lot of my work, it kind of really like sort of affected the way I produce work now, just from that little vision of this thing. And even the idea of like being somebody who creates album covers wasn't like a notion. It was just like, you're either an artist or you do something else. But like the idea of being a graphic artist was definitely not a thing that I even knew about, you know, when I was a kid at school or, you know. My dad was a fireman, but he was a carpet fitter on the side. Most firemen have got like sort of second jobs because they were on, especially like in the 80s, you know, they were on terrible money. And he used to take me sort of carpet fitting with him. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to do this, man. He was always just saying to me, this is, if it doesn't work out with the art thing, this is what you fall back on, gripper rods, underlay. And I just remember thinking, this is horrific, I never want to do this, you know what I mean? But the fire brigade, I was thinking, wow, he puts out fires, he saves people's lives. And I just realised I wasn't in any way practical. I can draw a picture, I can collage things. Other than that, I'm sort of wanting, you know. Yeah, my dad's proud of my layering techniques. Under layering. The gripper rod technique that I put on stuff, you know what I mean? Hey, you know what? Strangely enough, the concept, you never know what feeds into your work. It's kind of, like I say, I grew up in a kind of working class household. I never had like, get the violins out. I never had like kind of, you know, private school education or whatever, but I went to a good school. I went to the same school as Paul Gascoigne, which shows my level of education. No, it was a good working class school, you know what I mean? And like, I think my art teacher spotted early on that I was quite, I was competent at least, you know. She was just a great person, proper, really inspiring person. And I just said, stick in with this, because I've seen your other results from the other classes. It ain't happening, man. And like, yeah, so I got it moving, and we kind of went up here, you know. I was pretty bad at most things at school, apart from English and art. Maths, I was like, literally, there was 4 sets, and they had to do like another set for me and my mate, who was my best mate, who was like my mate Hutchie, who we were both in set 5 together. Brilliant, brilliant set. I grew up from, well, from the jump from 0 to 7 in the Baker Wall, and you know that period of your life is so kind of pivotal to the way you know, you're figuring out colours and kind of the way the world works, shapes, and the Baker Wall is kind of geometric shapes and primary colours. I honestly believe that kind of really bled into my work. After we lived in Baker, we moved across the gate, we moved across to a place called Deckham, which was a kind of the Wild West, a bit rough and ready. My early period was kind of very, I don't know, it was more kind of figuring out the world. In the middle bit was like, this is the world, and it's a bit dark and grimy. And then the next bit was like, I don't know, it was kind of where do I want to go next. And I moved to Liverpool. I studied for 3 years in Liverpool, and then I went down to London for 15 years. I went to St Martin's and I've done like an MA and stuff at St Martin's. When I first moved to London, I worked for Mixmag. My friend Richard Turley said, do you want to come? I was working in a bread factory on the Team Valley, and he was like, do you want to come to London and be the main illustrator of this magazine? And I was like, maybe. I was just straight down there, and I was out there in seconds, you know what I mean? So I went down there, making no money. It was like sort of, I had to illustrate this column for this guy called Tony Marcus, who basically used to just take different drugs every week and then do an article on it. And then I had to just do the illustration of whatever his vision. He was in like a gay sex dungeon in Vauxhall, and you know, on like acid. And then it was like the perfect commission, you know what I mean? I forgot what the question is. Oh, so the landmark. So I'd done this thing every week for 7 magazine. So my mate at 7, who had got us a job, phoned us up and said, Jimmy, XL want to talk to you about the Prodigy, you want to do a Prodigy cover. So I'm like, man, fuck off. Do you know, I think he's like, you know, I'm you know, scraping around. I was on like 100 quid a week, like literally like beans on toast, mint sauce sandwiches I even had some days. I was struggling, put it that way. And then it was Liam Howlett from the Prodigy. Had seen the work in 7 magazine, loved it, and then commissioned us to do like the first single from the new album after Fat of the Land, which was like the biggest selling dance album of all time. So I'm gonna do the new single, and I'm like eating mint sauce sandwiches, and then this happens, you know. So I'm like buzzing. I can't actually believe this is happening, but at the same time, I'm kind of completely scared, and like, you know, like I'm amazed. I can't believe I've been commissioned for it, but it did actually happen, you know. So I ended up doing the cover for this single called Baby's Got a Temper. And from then, Liam then come back and said, you know, I want you to do the album. So I was like, the album after Fat of the Land, the biggest selling dance album ever. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, you know what I mean? And I did that for like a year and a half. Felt like a bit of a student, just messing around with stuff, but this thing was going to be a huge release. And then got a call from XL and just said, man, we've had somebody else working on the job, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, I like felt the pieces, and I couldn't believe it. But I remember just thinking, for like a couple of weeks I was on a right downer, do you know what I mean? You know, I'd come to a real crunch, and if we talk about like blank pages, the blank pages had totally occupied my life. I had like total block, on creating stuff. I've just been in the same loop of creating these Prodigy covers. I must have done like 500 different covers. I look back now, I like found the old Prodigy folder the other day when I was cleaning out my studio, and there's so much shit in there you wouldn't believe. This gets back to the whole idea of like what was a pivotal part of your creative life. It was that, because I failed at that, and you know, and a lot of young design, when I give talks and stuff at colleges, it's one of the pivotal parts. You know, I might say like a couple of like successful projects just to get them interested, but then I always mention the Prodigy, because I just remember thinking, man, oh my God, my life's fell to pieces, man, and what the hell, and this is a nightmare. But when maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, shit, man, that was so important that happened to me. It gave me an aesthetic, getting back to the idea of like waking up in the morning thinking, that's crap, that's good, that's crap. That all came through the 500 Prodigy covers that I did. And why, looking now at them, there's 2, 3 ones in there that definitely could have been a cover. Brilliant, a really good cover. But you know what, the dude who did the cover, I thought it was a really good cover. I'm not bitter about that at all, you know what I mean? It's probably better than what I did. But I think like, what a learning curve, and what a brilliant thing to have, rather than just being, you know what, mate, that's great. Everything's great that you do. You need to have a horrific failure in your life to be successful in any way. I really believe that. Beck's a perfectionist, man. He's a real perfectionist, and I respect that about him. But working with him is challenging. I think it's two artists kind of rebounding off each other, and like, he's just a perfectionist, and I think that's an amazing thing. That's why his music's amazing. But you know, it's not all kind of gravy. It's not all like, you know, plain sailing. It's difficult sometimes. But I think what great art is created through everybody just being a bit cheery with each other, you know. Basically, when I did like the A level, I'm showing my age here, but computers weren't really. There was a few kids who were using like, you know, computers and stuff when I was doing my A levels. But that was like, the people I was influenced by, like Jamie Reid and like Barney Bubbles, and Jamie Reid definitely didn't use computers, but like Barney Bubbles looked like he used computers, but it was all kind of chopped up and very tactile, and using different textures and using different papers. And what's that photocopier that he's using? And what's that screen print halftone that he's using? And it was about delving into that. But I try to use that stuff in a contemporary filter in a way, rather than, I think you see a lot of art which is kind of just ripping off old punk stuff. But I want to take those methods and those techniques and look at them in a contemporary manner, in a sense, you know what I mean? So whether it's looking at, whether it is getting Trump, or it's getting, you know, Elon Musk, or somebody else, and using a lot of the half tones and stuff that I'm using are actually digital, you know what I mean? But I'm then filtering them back through an analog technique. So it's about like, it's actually about mixing things up and taking new techniques. I stretch things, and I kind of I use kind of CMYK on an app on my phone, and then make it huge like this, and then also screen print it. So you're using these contemporary inventions in a way, and creating work out of them, rather than just staying and like kind of, all right, I'll just use that thing that he did back in the day, but I'll just do Trump, but like in the 1970s version of Trump. That's boring to me in that way.